I'm Devyn, a life coach.
I'm Meg, a death doula. And this podcast is what happens when a life coach and a death doula walk into a bar.
Honest conversations about grief, joy, and who gets your mother's pearl earrings. Nothing is off limits.
And it all goes back to death.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
Good. I miss you. We haven't talked in so long.
I know. We've both been on vacation weeks, and it's been a long time since we've chatted.
Yeah, it's been a wild couple of weeks. I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be settled and with you.
Yeah, same. Wait, tell me about everything that's gone on.
So I went home, or I went to Rhode Island, I should say, with the kids for a little 4th of July, which was great. And then I went to Connecticut and checked in with everybody there for a while. And now I just came from the airport. I'm back in Florida.
Love that. Did you
Yeah.
have any cool adventures, fun stories, things to tell us on your
Well,
time?
yeah, I mean, I learned a really cool thing. Of course, it's, all goes back to death. I was with my friend, and after golf, we went to their house and we were having a drink. Now, she has had a year. I mean, she's had a hell of a year. Anyway, so her mom passed. She had to move her mom, and then her mom passed, and buy and sell houses and all this stuff. So, we were talking, and this is my friend who's my age. And she has really long hair. And there's not a lot of girls my age that have really long hair, because once you go through menopause, you lose all your hormones and your hair thins, and it's just not a good look. But she has really great hair, and it's really long. And I kind of always wondered, like, why did you grow your hair that long? And out of the blue, it came up that when her dad died, her hairdresser told her, you need to grow your hair. Now, this is something I had never heard of before in my life. And I was like immediately intrigued. And I said, tell me why. And then I started looking it up. And it's this cultural thing about growing your hair. And it says, so I Googled it. And it says, growing your hair while grieving provides a tangible physical marker of time passing and personal transformation. Watching your hair grow requires daily care, giving you a gentle, rhythmic ritual that fosters self-nurturing and refocusing your energy on personal development.
I love that.
I
And I've
know.
never heard of that.
And I thought you would love that, because that's like life coaching,
Yeah.
how to do self-care. And it also serves as a protective barrier. And it's got all these cultural meanings. And I thought, I had never heard that. Isn't it fascinating?
Fascinating. And I feel like there are very few things about death and grief that you haven't heard before. So
Right.
I bet a lot of people in our audience do not know about this. But I think it's interesting because they say that hair holds energy, right? So, like, your hair really has so much to do with, I think, however light or heavy you're feeling. Like, when you get a haircut and you're like, I feel 25 pounds lighter. Obviously, you didn't lose 25 pounds in, an hour. But I think that our hair, especially as women, represents so much that it makes sense to me that that would be some sort of a ritual
Yeah,
and
it kind
time
of
passing.
represents about how you feel about yourself. And I remember very early on, I think we were newlyweds, and I was in a really foul mood. And my husband turned around and he said to me, would you just go get your hair done? And I said, why do you say that to me? And he said, because when you get your hair done, you're always in a better mood.
So funny.
So this kind of all ties into self-care, how we feel about ourselves, watching time pass. I don't know. I was just really enthralled with the whole thing.
I love that.
Yeah.
In my world, so I feel like I've lived 85 lives in 8 days.
Okay.
And mostly because I've had like a full circle of life experience. I started with someone who I love getting engaged, actually a few people getting engaged, and then went to a funeral, and then went to a baby shower, all within the span of 7 days. So I feel like I have come full circle. I've seen the full circle of life. And my new thing in my life is having people talk to me. So we talked about this on our first episode. People come to me just in general with, like, I don't know, taboo things to say, or things that they wouldn't tell anyone else, or things that they, want to have kept secret or get advice on just because they know what I do for a living. But now the new thing is, oh, you have to tell the death doula or put this on your podcast.
So funny.
So this weekend, like 2 days before the funeral, it was a friend of mine whose father passed, and he was very ill and on hospice for quite a while, and they were preparing for this to happen. And that weird time in between, sort of like, the death and the funeral, that we call the business of death, where you're just in logistics, and this person had been caregiving for a while, so all of a sudden your routine totally changes. And she said to me, we were at a dinner together, and she like pulled me over to her and she said, okay, you have to tell the death doula, and you have to put this on your podcast. She said, I know this is unconventional, but my sister, my brother, and I went to view my father's body, and basically, like, he was being cremated, and so they basically, I don't know how graphic this was, but they basically like watched him be wheeled into the incinerator. Is that what it's
Oh,
called?
wow. Yes.
Okay. Which for many people, I'm sure is a lot. She said it was the most closure she has ever felt in her life. She walked out feeling so much lighter. She and her siblings had a total bonding moment. And it just made me think, forget about it being the right thing, the wrong thing, because I had a conversation with someone, later that evening, who said I could never do that, and, that would scare me or whatever. But it just made me think about, and something that we talk about often and want people who are listening to think about, is that there are just so many ways to do this. There are so many ways to grieve. Nothing is right or wrong. Most of the time, things don't make sense. And in this case in particular, I was obviously 0% judgment on my part. I think everybody handles things the way that they want to, knowing that it's a less conventional way of dealing with things. But so happy for the person and her siblings that they could find closure in that. And what an unexpected moment, I'm sure that was, but kind of a uniting one for them
Wow.
also.
And
I know.
unforgettable. And, good for them, because this is such the dichotomy. Death is the one thing that all of humanity has in common, but I'm pretty sure no two deaths are alike, right? So there's no right
Totally.
way or wrong way. And I love that they were united in that decision, because, that could have gone another way if one of them didn't agree with it. That's pretty remarkable.
Well, I don't think that he necessarily cared about the send off, but they really respected his wishes all the way down to, he did not want to have a wake, and he did not want to have any sort of like luncheon or any sort of reception after the fact. The reasoning was kind of sad. And my poor sister, who was like, I'm too hormonal and pregnant for this.
Oh,
Basically, he said, I don't want to burden anyone, which is so sad. And I feel so sad when people feel that way and think that way, because I think that people underestimate how willing people are to celebrate the end of their life, their legacy, and to come together in that way. But yeah, that was an interesting moment. I had never heard of anyone actually in that moment.
right.
Um,
So we've
but
got
yeah,
growing
she was
hair.
like,
We've got the going, watching them be cremated. I mean, wow, this is a lot of new stuff.
okay, the other thing I've realized is that wakes are out. No one is having a wake anymore.
Yes, I know. It's changing, definitely.
It's changing. I think I like the change.
I'm good with it. I mean, I'm good with tradition, but
Hmm.
I'm good with, self-representation. I want
Yeah,
everybody to have what they want, and there is no right and there is no wrong. If we
yeah.
do the
No, it's so true.
traditional wake, though, I think you and I need to start redecorating the funeral homes, because they're all
I
kind
know.
of dated.
No, I've been to so many wakes. Let me tell you, I've been to more wakes than I have funerals, because, if you can't attend a funeral in the morning, or if you can't, attend a service, then usually you go and sort of represent at the wake. I've been to so many wakes, and every single time I'm like, we couldn't have done better than this room. Like, not the family, the owners of the building.
They need
Like,
us.
yes, they need us, which actually is a perfect segue into what we want to talk about today.
Okay.
I've discovered I've discovered the gentle art of Swedish death cleaning on Peacock. It's executively produced by Amy Poehler. It was one season, one and done in 2023. I must have completely missed it, but now I can't stop watching. And the premise, I texted you immediately and said, have to watch this show, turn it on. But the premise is that it's like a psychologist, an interior decorator, and then a professional organizer. And they come into whatever stage of grief or end of life that you're in and help you either prepare for your own death. Like the first episode, which I thought was so powerful, was a woman preparing for her own end of life and wanting to get things in order so that her family wasn't burdened with having to do, what she was doing in the moment, and also to get her house ready for her to feel comfortable in that, which I know that you've had an experience doing that. But I, was just so taken aback by, first of all, how psychological the process is. And as you know, but I'm not sure that many of our listeners know, in my past life, that was my first career, was being a professional organizer. So I was a personal shopper and stylist, and then I would organize people's closets. And with that, I mean, I then eventually started organizing other spaces in people's homes who I had worked with. But in that, it was such an emotional job. Like, people thought when I would come home from doing a closet that it was sort of just like, okay, 8 hours of really laborious hard work. And I was like, no, this was emotional. Like, people are crying over clothes that they've been holding on to since, they were pre having a baby, or they moved, or their divorce genes, or, there were so many different things. A lot that had to do with grief and transition and moving from one chapter into another. But I have always been fascinated by how emotional and how mental it is to give things away. And, I would love to just have a conversation with you, with our listeners, about what to do, first of all, in end of death, and how to get your stuff together, but also just in your daily life, how not to feel overwhelmed or like you're holding on to things that you feel like have emotional weight. And then lastly, if you are left with the task of going through someone's things or having to hold on to things for someone, how that whole process works.
Right. Well, I think in all the cases, you have to ask yourself the why. Like, why? Why am I attached to this one thing? What is this one thing representing? What is it giving me, or what is it not giving me that I want it to give me? And, the death cleaning, the thing I loved about that show, many things I loved about that show, but they weren't always about somebody who was imminently dying. There was that one segment that you were talking about, and she was terminal. And so she was going to get her room ready, which I've done for people. I thought it was interesting because not only was it about that, getting your space ready, but it was about, she wanted her friends to help her, but she never had the conversation with them. And what the therapist discovered was that when her mom was dying, her mom wouldn't let anybody in. So she realized she was doing what her mother did. So this wonderful Swedish group got her to realize, or how to realize, what she really wanted. And that was communication, and have the dinner with her friends and have them all be there to help her at the end. That was amazing, as well as doing her room so she would have a comfortable place to go. But other things were, was his name Crosby? The one his house was like impeccable upstairs, and downstairs, the basement was just everything his parents owned. It was like the duck on top of the water, you're fine, but beneath the water, you're like, flailing. That was his house. Yeah. And he had a lot of stuff happen. He had cancer, the dad died, and then the mom died, all within, a couple of years. So when they got to the root of all of this, he said, I low-key feel like if I keep these things, they will come back. he was able to verbalize that. And then once he verbalized that, he realized that that's never going to happen. And then with time, he was able to look at the objects and realize that his parents wouldn't want him drowning in all of this stuff. You know, their inability to be organized constituted this emergency for him. And he realized that's not what they would want. And these things don't bring them back or, bring him that much joy. A few items did. But when he realized that, it was so beautiful. So that's an example of, if you can do this death cleaning while you're alive and well, you don't burden your loved ones with it. And it's an
Yeah.
enormous responsibility, and there's enormous guilt. Like, I remember I had a piece of furniture that was my mother's, and I remember her always saying, it's a great piece of furniture, blah, 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 blah. And it was. But if I was going to keep it, I really wanted to paint it. For my house, for my needs, I wanted to paint it. And I thought to myself, I can't paint it. She'll come back from the grave and haunt me. She'll be so mad at me. Then I thought about it for a while, and I really kind of tried to take my mind out of the here and now. And I thought, well, if you die and there's nothing else, then she won't know. If you die and you believe that you go to this immense joy, then me painting this piece blue will bring me joy, and then that'll bring her joy. Right? So I painted it blue. And I think she's happy about it. So we have these notions of this guilt and carrying on the legacy, and these are things. And when they weigh us down, it's not really what they wanted for us. But we need to take responsibility for our things and do it when we're alive and do it when we're well.
Yeah. And, it reminds me when you're talking about that guy and his basement. So I had a client once that I worked with for years, and she was like so nice and really wanted to have her shit together. You could tell, when you can tell when someone is living a life that feels overwhelming, and that their clutter feels overwhelming. And I've always said that I think your external world is a reflection of how you internally feel. So when you're in chaos, or when you're not feeling good about yourselves, you let your house go a little bit, or you don't clean up in the same way, or you hoard things to make yourself feel safer. There are so many psychological things that go on. But this woman in particular, and this was many years ago, like at least 10 years ago, and I worked with her often and went into her home and did room by room. And we finally got to the basement, which is basically like where the kids played and where all the extra stuff was. But there were a lot of bins, like storage bins, in sort of this back tucked away place. And when we got to the bins, I said, okay, let's make a time where I can come back and we can really look through every single thing that's in here, because we had already done the rest of the space. And she said, I don't know if I can do that. I think it's going to be too hard for me. And I said, why? What is in the bins? Long story short, she had had a miscarriage of twins, like at a pretty far along place.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was holding on to everything that she had gotten for them. Meanwhile, she had had two kids after this happened who were great and in the house and playing and happy, and she had not used one thing that was supposed to be used for the twins who passed. And so going through those bins, which we eventually did, and I said, let's just try it, and if you don't want to, then we won't go any further, but let's just see how you feel. She hadn't opened them in probably 7 or 8 years, and when she did, it was very emotional, obviously, which, I think, again, some people just have the capacity to hold space for that. I am one of them. I'm not afraid of someone breaking down or crying, and I'm okay with, being that shoulder, and also being just there and being supportive and just allowing someone to have that moment. But it ended up being truly, if I think back to just like my entire career in organization, where I really was doing that for almost 5 years, and I had a lot of clients, that was by far the most kind of cathartic moment, where I really felt like, wow, this and being able to let go of some of these things not the memories, not the energy, not the people that you're holding on to, but getting rid of some of these things is actually going to free you in such a way. And she has written to me since years later and has thanked me and said that, that was such a wonderful experience, and no one, even her husband, could do that with her, right? I think when you're so close to things, it's very hard to see, but yeah, it's interesting what we take emotional attachment to, and how we feel that certain items are like an attachment, of the person, a limb of theirs, on some level. And I think that the more we hold on to these things, even though it seems like we're doing the right thing because we don't want to be hastily getting rid of something, or regret that we give something away, but it really does lighten the energy, and you start to realize the more that you give away, the less of a hold it has on you, because you realize it is not the energy of the person. And I'm not saying everyone should get rid of everything. I'm just saying, in general, when people feel overwhelmed, and we have some questions at the end of this from threads where I want to address this even more in depth, but when people feel overwhelmed by how much stuff they have, to start to get rid of small things at a time, I think starts to make you realize, like I said, how insignificant in the grand scheme a lot of the physical items are.
Yeah. And I feel too, how are we going to help get the word out or create this culture that we should help each other with this? I don't know why there's this sense. Sometimes it's shame, like, oh, I have all this stuff and I can't even deal with it, so I'm just going to keep it there. Or I don't have the money to hire somebody to help me. Or how can we be there for each other and help each other do this? And it can be such an intimate experience, and it can lighten the load, and it can bring in joy and humor and doing it for each other. I mean, we do it for our parents, and, we do it for our grandparents and family members. But what about friends and neighbors, and saying, like, I know you just had a big loss. How do you say, can I help you when it's time to go through their things? Can I help you donate? Can I help you in any way? I mean, it's a hard thing to do alone.
It's a very hard thing to do alone, and it's why I think professional organizers and people who do that have been so successful, because it's an outside sort of like a therapist versus talking to your friend. Yes, it's very comforting to talk to someone, but it's also difficult sometimes to really break through in that way and to really let them into how you're really feeling. I'm surrounded by type A badass women. Those are my friends. And we know each other now long enough that we can have more vulnerable moments. But I think, especially when we were all in our 20s, like, there is a level of, I'll let you in, but not all the way. And I think that as friendship grows, obviously, and with specific people, you feel kind of like kindred spirits, like you can have these deeper conversations with people. But I always started, even with my girlfriends who I knew were even going through like a breakup, right? It doesn't even have to be a death, like some sort of grief, chapter of their life, whatever else. Like, you, me, and a bottle of wine, let's just go through your shit. I mean, I've helped more friends move than I can tell you, but it's because I think you can show up to something like that with levity. And I have this conversation with my clients a lot, that when you approach something like it's heavy, it's probably going to be heavy. When you approach something like it's lighter, at least, it's going to feel lighter. And so going into these situations, not feeling like this is this really daunting thing that I'm never going to be able to get through, I have so much, but just saying, okay, let's make this into kind of a fun thing. Like, in Sex and the City, when they're cleaning out Carrie Bradshaw's closet and they're going through and they've got the niece there and they're doing the whole thing. Like, it can be like that. Not every moment, not every situation, but there are so many moments of joy that we can also lean into in our time of transitions, in our time of grief. And I think that starting just from that place as a friend, if you want to help another friend out, saying, I'm going to bring cookies, or I'm going to bring a bottle of wine, or let's watch a movie afterwards, but like, let's go through your stuff,
Right. Let's
is a
not be
great way to
afraid.
start.
Let's not be afraid to go there with them, you know?
Yeah. And I think people would benefit just in general. And we kind of had this conclusion last episode also, that having an open line of communication with the people who you love in your life is deeply important at all times. And to your point of this, initial episode of the Swedish death cleaning, the woman came from such a good place and not wanting to burden, or not wanting to make her friends feel afraid. But at the end of the day, and having been a friend on the other side of someone going through something and not wanting to burden me, if you're a friend, you always want to be there for your friends. Am I right?
Listen, it's so funny you say that in the word burden, because if a friendship is a two-way street, you can't always be the giver. There are times you're going to have to receive. It just that's an authentic friendship. So when you keep saying, "Oh, I can do it," or "I got it," but you're always there to help somebody else, you got to go deeper. You got to receive. You got to let somebody else show their love. And when you say burden, I laugh, because when my dad moved in with us, people would think, "Oh, well, is that a burden?" But it was the greatest blessing in the world. And so I always say to my kids, I want to be a burden. But what I'm really saying is, I want you to think of me as a blessing when you help me. I don't
Yeah,
want you to think of me as a burden when you help me. And teaching people how to help, and also teaches people how to receive. And, you
totally.
give what you get.
No, and it's a great point. And I think, even when my grandfather passed, it was really the first time where I forced myself on many levels, because I needed it. I needed the support of my friends, and I needed people to be there for me in a different way than I had before. Just purely from even an understanding, like, I'm not on the ball right now. I don't have all my shit together. You're not going to hear from me as often. Just even saying those kinds of things, and allowing people to hold space for you, and also give you grace in not being 100% yourself. But also, I have wonderful friends, and I'm so grateful that I do. But I forced myself to say, here's what's happening, because there's so many times where I have not done that. And I think, again, when you're in your 20s, everybody's going through the same kind of stuff, and you don't really know who can actually help, or if you're being, a pain in the ass. You're like, I don't know, where everybody else's head is at, and what everyone else's capacity is. But I think as you get older, you realize that people will let you know their capacity. And if somebody can't do something for you, they'll say no, or they'll say, I can do that, but not this week. Or they'll
Right.
say, I can't show up for you that way, but I can send you food, or whatever it is. So just being able to, and even if it feels like a force, being able to reach out to people who you want support from, who you want to hear from, who you want love from, I think is very powerful. And it made a major difference in my own grief journey, just being able to have that open communication with people and saying, I'm exhausted, this really sucks, instead of, yep, everything's great, I'm totally fine, nothing has changed, la di da.
Right. You were being authentic, and you were receiving whatever it was they could give you. Yep.
Yeah.
So I have a piece of advice of how to avoid burdening your loved ones with your stuff.
Okay, yes.
Get a dumpster every 5 years.
I love that.
That's what I did. Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because when you have 4 kids and stuff comes into your house, every 5 years, we got a 30-yard dumpster, and we did the attic, the basement, and the garage. Filled a 30-yard dumpster every 5 years. We still had a full house when we moved after 20 years, but can you imagine if we hadn't done that?
Yes, I can, because I've been into homes where people have not done that.
Oh my,
And it is it is not great.
no, it isn't. So we can do better. We need to take
Totally.
responsibility for doing what we want with our things, or letting our loved ones know. And We have some forms that would help on our website about writing down who gets what and the why, back to the why. Because you can tell your advocate, I want Devyn to get this lamp. And then the person passes and the advocate says, okay, Devyn gets the lamp. But then Susie could say, well, that's not right because 10 years ago at Christmas, I was told I could get the lamp. And then the advocate's like, well, I don't know. This is just what I was told. But if we can get people to write things down and the why, like I want Devyn to have the lamp because I bought it on her birthday and it reminds me of her, whatever it is. But,
Yep.
It's not this daunting task. We can do better with little things like that.
Totally. And I think that, living in Manhattan and in small apartments has made me a major minimalist, but I recognize that not everyone is like that. I'm actually overboard in that I'll be looking for something I threw away 4 years ago. Be like, where did I put that damn thing? And then I realize it's in someone else's home.
Yep.
I donated
Gotta
it.
buy another one.
Um, yeah, but I really think that the more streamlined you keep, again, your external environment, the better that you feel internally. And, I think that wanting to leave things behind for people is actually like a very nice sentimental thing. But to your point, I think intentionally doing that means so much more than here's all my crap. Because it gives the person an understanding of what it meant to you. It gives the person an understanding of what it should mean to them. And, when you're throwing things away, it doesn't always have to be the end of an era, right? It doesn't always have
Right.
to be this one big culminating, now it's over. It can just be, I want my space in order. I don't want people after I am not here to have to do all of this for me. And, again, the emotional attachment to it, the emotional feelings of, I need to have all of this. I've never in my life known someone who has had an abundance of things and there not been a completely different root issue as to why they
Right.
want so many things around them. So really thinking about if you're having extreme attachments to physical objects
Mm-hmm.
or to, I can't stop buying this or I want more of this or I can't get rid of these things, that you are looking into why you feel that way. Talk about the why. Where is this coming from and why does it bring you comfort? Because a lot of times when someone's trying to fill a void in particular is when you usually see someone who has like an overabundance of whatever it is. And so finding what the root cause of that is
Mm-hmm.
and addressing that oftentimes leads to you being like, okay, great, now I can get rid of all of this because it actually wasn't the thing that was filling the void. This other thing does, or this is what makes this actually feel better.
Right. So it opens you up to be filled up with the feelings that bring you joy and that heal you.
Yeah. And it opens you up to bringing things into your life, even energetically, that you didn't have room for before.
Right.
I think that so many people, to circle all the way back to the beginning of the conversation about how your hair holds energy, we don't realize how interconnected every single thing is. Our mind and our body are always talking to each other. Our external world affects our internal world and vice versa. Everything is connected. Everything that we do has meaning on some level. And, I think that people don't quite realize how interpersonal it is to have things, keep things, get rid of things. It means more oftentimes,
Mm-hmm.
than saying, well, okay, I'm finally throwing away this pen. There's so much more psychologically to it, emotionally to it. And if you can really get yourself to think about, and I used to go through a checklist with my clients who I was doing organizational stuff for, where it was less about like what brings you joy. That was after my time. I'm not going to say that I invented closet organization, but I was doing
Yeah,
it
you
first.
did.
No, I'm kidding. um, but I do think that, it was less about what brings you joy and more about what are you going to do with this and why do you feel you want to have it? Because there are some things, and we all know this, like I have a sweatshirt that I'll probably never wear again, but that for whatever reason I can't get rid of. But I have one sweatshirt like that. You have to kind of pick and choose these moments of this really means something to me versus this is something that I've just had and I'm keeping because it's comfortable to have, not necessarily because it's what's actually best for me.
Right. And so if we can just all live a little more intentionally about our things, it can help lighten our load and others.
Yeah. I also want to read some questions from
Okay.
threads because I
Yep.
think we have two and I want to hear what you think about them.
Okay.
And I also have a few things that I would like to say about both of them. Okay, so the first one is from Mama G. Affic or Mama Gaffic. I don't know. My mom died in October. She lived with us, so all of her stuff is here. I've managed to donate a lot of her clothes and books, but I'm struggling to get all of it out. There are some things that I just can't part with. She was an artist, and there are so many pieces that I feel like I can't donate. How do I honor her and make room for new things?
So that's tough. And I totally relate, and it took me probably 3 years to do my dad's closet. He lived with us. So I just walked by it, didn't address it, knew it was there.
Mhm.
But then one day I did the whole thing in one day when I was ready. And I don't know what made me be ready, but I came across his World War II uniform. And I thought, okay, this is something. I don't know what to do with this. And then I saw that he had all those pins, it was all decorated with pins. And I thought, oh, I'm going to take those pins, I'm going to turn them into jewelry, and I'm going to give them to future grandchildren. So maybe this woman, if she has grandchildren or nieces and nephews or, future generations, she could hold on to some of the paintings, not all of them, and then pass them down with the story.
I love that. And my advice is similar in the sense that I think everything can be sort of repurposed and thought of in a different way. So, to your point of the making jewelry with the pins, my grandmother has always gotten shirts, like button down shirts from anybody in our family who has passed and gotten like teddy bears made out of them, and one for each person in the family. So, first of all, you have a collection and it's cute and it does feel reminiscent, but you don't have a closet full of 45 button down shirts that no one's ever going to wear or use. So I think repurposing anything, and I think when it comes to art also, and something I used to do a lot of with kids' art for people when I was organizing, is like either have them photographed and take pictures of them and put them into a book. If you can't keep every single piece, right? Keep your top 5 and then have everything put into a beautiful book and give it to each family member as a coffee table book or, something to
That's a great
remember
idea.
this person as, even if there are little descriptions of how you found it or where you found it. And the other thing is now, I don't know if you've seen these, but there are artists who are doing like these big large form collages of all different kinds of art. So like they'll take the art, digitize it, and then put it all together. So it's just one big piece. So that would be another thing I think, because I think that art is difficult. And I think that clothes are difficult because you want the smell of the person, the feel of the person to be reminded of, oh, I loved that sweater on them.
Right.
And it was even in one of the Swedish death cleaning episodes, her mom's pink sweater was like the thing that she needed to hold on to, and they kept it for her and they put it in her closet. But I think choosing things that are your personal favorites, if you have other family members, and then you say, what does everybody else want? And if somebody wants something, then they can have that. But otherwise, yeah, having things turned into useful objects. And I know like Etsy is amazing, Uncommon Goods is amazing. All of these places now, you really can find someone who you can turn denim into a handbag. Like there's so many different things
And
to
they
do.
appeal to our senses, right? Our sight,
Right.
our touch, and having a loved one, you know, have our senses react to them. That's pretty awesome. So I love all those ideas. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I love your idea. That's perfect.
Thanks. I'm going to have Jessica
Um,
Ritchie make them.
you
Your
did?
cousin. No, I asked her years ago, and I still have them in a bag, but I said, this is what I want to do with it. So I really want Jessica to make them.
Oh, she's the best.
She's the best.
She is the best, and she will make beautiful pieces. This is actually, we should plug her. We could start a new business for her. Send her your your artifacts, and she will turn them into beautiful pieces of jewelry. Jessica Ritchie. The other one, this one really touched me because I feel like as someone who does not care about getting married, never has, and does not plan on having children, and we'll do another episode on this because every time I say this, you're like, what the fuck are people talking about? But everyone says, aren't you afraid to die alone? And so this particularly touched me, and I want to know what you think about this. This is from funkytown_fox on Threads. I've always been kind of curious about who cleans up your stuff and where it goes where it goes if you die without anyone to do it for you. I'm a trans man who got disowned by my family and don't have a partner currently, and that particular issue has always weighed on me. I don't want my mess to burden some random cleaning lady or forensic cleanup crew.
So
Okay, that could make me cry reading it, but
that visual on the show, on Crosby's episode, when they brought him to the dump, and he said, "Why did you bring me here? Like, this is my biggest fear. I can't do this." And they said, "Because if you don't do what you need to do, this is where everything's going to end up." And I feel like the same would be true for this person. If they don't figure out how to ask somebody, or if they don't for help, or if they don't figure out how to do it themselves, or they don't address it and donate it and do the work now, their fear is going to come true, and it will end up in a dump.
agreed. And I think that, we talk so often about having family support and family grief and family death, but your friends are so important. And if you have friends who can hold space for conversations like this, which you should have friends who can be able to do this, just from the perspective of people who love you and care about you, and even if it's a hard conversation, they can get through it because they love you and care about you. But I think that giving your friends an understanding of what you want to have happen, and yes, doing all the work beforehand, making sure that you're not keeping things or unnecessarily holding on to things, and kind of doing your own sort of work before the end of life, that you then will hopefully have friends, even if you don't have family, who will help kind of pick up those pieces and grant your wishes and say, these are the things that I really want to go to this organization, or these are the things that I really want to go to the rest of our friends, or please, donate these, or by the way, burn this, throw this away. Don't let anyone ever see that.
Right.
I know someone who there was, a phone situation that was not taken care of by the right person at end of life, and it caused a lot of issues. So, you also need to think about those things, right? What do you not want people to see? And what do you want people to
Good point.
get
You
rid
have any
of?
mess
Yeah.
you need to clean up? Yeah.
Yeah. And just that, think about how many people have diaries and how many people have, just things that photos, whatever it is. It doesn't even have to be like deviant behavior of any sort, but really just like private things that were
Right.
for you and the person it was between, or just yourself. And so, yeah, I think having the conversations, and again, I was just with my best friend over the weekend at her baby shower, and which, by the way, I just on a quick side note about me being psychic and manifesting. My best friend and I, like I said last episode, known each other 30 years. I had a dream January 3rd that she was pregnant with a baby girl. Okay. I've never had a dream she's pregnant before. I've known her my whole life. She got pregnant that week.
I believe.
Texted her. There's texting proof.
I believe.
Yeah. So connected. I was like, that's the baby visiting me. I have a thin veil between the afterworld,
I
but
love it.
must be a before world that I have a thin veil too. But so we were there and I said, oh, I talked about you on my podcast this week because I talked about how, first of all, we want to die alone, drinking margaritas and laughing. And if that's not an option, that if I'm in a position that I don't want to be in, you'll know what to do. And so we were talking, and, we're at a happy occasion. This was not morbid. This was not anything. And we're laughing our asses off because these are the conversations that you can have with your friends and say, okay, great. Yeah, packed. And, cheers our soda water now that she can't drink. But I just think that if you have conversations with your friends, and I have a feeling so many of these episodes are going to go back to how we communicate with the people in our lives, and especially the people we love, because it really ultimately is the thing that puts you in control of what happens next, is being able to communicate with people and have your needs met by the people who love you and who care about you.
So I feel like we always come back to communication, education, and volunteer. Show up. Right? Everything we talk
Totally.
comes down to that. So
yeah, I love that. I feel like we should end the podcast mic drop right there.
okay.
I loved talking to you. I love talking about this. And we are going to have a form with just kind of like a checklist, an organizational checklist on the website. Everything is backtodeath.com. And then all of our handles, if you want to ask us questions on Threads or on Instagram, see what we're up to, it's at It All Goes Back to Death. Have a great week, everyone. And I love you.
Love you more.